Alright, what's good everybody? So today we're going to look at every single rare knife pattern in CS2. If you're new to the game, there's so many rare patterns on the knives that it's very confusing. So today I'm going to cover all of them, explain how they work, and this took a ton of time. So if you guys enjoyed the video, consider subbing to the channel, and let's get right into the video. First up, we have two interesting patterns on the Safari mesh. You can get two different patterns. You can get the full green pattern, which you can see here on pattern 5. The entire blade and handle for the most part is dark green. The other rare pattern is going to be full tan, where you can see the entire blade and handle once again is going to be full tan opposite to the green. That's not necessarily like a full official rare pattern, but something to consider when you're getting a Safari mesh. Next up, we have the Scorched finish, and we have the rare pattern black gems. Now, the most popular one is the Stiletto 791 black gem. As you can see, the entire blade is full black. Typically, Scorched is going to have a bit of like tan and black, but these patterns are going to have full black. Now, this is not the only one that you can get. 791 is the most popular one on the Stiletto and probably looks the best, but you can get full black patterns on about 8 to 9 other knives that will have different patterns as well. So if you're interested in this, there's a dedicated guide to it. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have the case hardened finish, which has a tremendous amount of rare patterns. So I'm going to go over them one by one. First up, we have blue gems. This is 387, the $1.5 million karambit. Everybody knows about it. Blue gems are one of the most high tier knives in CS2. They make the entire blade full blue. There's different tiers to them, and they're available on pretty much all case hardened knives. Next up, we have gold gems, where the entire blade is going to be full yellow. This is pattern 939 on the karambit, but you can get gold gems on every case hardened knife, and typically, you know, the more yellow, the better the pattern is. It's a great pattern if you want to pair it with something like Arids. Next up, we have a really interesting rare pattern. This is called the Blood in the Water. Now, what defines a Blood in the Water is a full blue background, basically a blue gem, but instead of, you know, full blue, we're going to have these purple spots and stains on the blade that make it look like blood that is flowing in the water. Really cool. They're quite expensive because they technically are blue gems, and they're available on a few knives. The karambit has some of the best Blood in the Waters in the game. Next up, we have island patterns. Now, this is a classic 606, and what defines the island pattern, it is more of a niche pattern, but basically it's going to be a blue gem where full background is blue, but instead of like purple dots, we're going to have yellow, and it basically resembles like a top-down view of islands in the ocean. Pretty cool, very niche, and typically classic knives do tend to have better ones compared to other knives. Now, besides blue gems, you can actually get double-sided blue gems, where you can see both the play side and the back side is full blue. These are extremely expensive knives, extremely expensive patterns. This right here is pattern 577 on the skeleton, a very well-known pattern. And these are gorgeous, but once again, extremely expensive because, you know, super high tier and on both sides. Next up, we have a super niche karambit rare pattern, and it's going to be the Dragon Claw, where 70% of the blade is blue towards the tip, and then the rest of it is going to be yellow. Typically, with karambits, the ring is going to be blue as well with Dragon Claws, but basically, you can see the name explains what the pattern is. It's pretty cool. Once again, niche pattern, only works on the karambit, but really cool. I just wanted to show it off. Next up, we have the beach pattern karambits, and obviously, it's just going to be on the karambit, and as you can see, we're going to have like a little split between the sand and the water. It looks really cool. It's like a silhouette of a beach. Blue is going to be towards the tip, yellow towards the back, and really cool. Quite expensive once again just because of so much blue, but definitely a well-known pattern. If you would like to buy any of these skins, make sure to check out today's sponsor, which is SkinSwap. SkinSwap is a CS2 marketplace where you can buy, sell, and trade skins with great reviews on Trustpilot. It's an easy way to swap your old skins for new ones or cash them out, and you always get a 40% deposit bonus. They offer a huge selection of skins to pick from and even daily giveaways. So if you want to try it out, you can use my link in the description for a free CS item. Next up, we have blaze gems. Now, blaze gems are available on different knives. One of the most prominent examples is the karambit pattern 819. As you can see, a ton of burnt orange, a ton of purple. This is a very unique looking knife. There's not a lot of blaze patterns out there that look similar to this, and very niche as well. Next up, just an honorable mention for the case hardens. This is just one pattern, the karambit pattern 463. It's not like a rare pattern. It's basically a blue gem, but people call this pattern right here the red eye. As you can see, there's like an eye in the middle with blue all around it. Really cool pattern, only works for the karambit and on one pattern, super niche, but once again, it's just something cool that I wanted to show off. Next up, we have the Crimson Web finish. Now, there's three specific rare pattern types. We have single web, double web, and triple. Right here on this M9 pattern 8, we have a single web where there's one web in the middle. But if you're interested in Crimson Webs in particular, make sure to check out the official guide because it varies depending on the knife, and you have to look out for fake webs as well. Next up, we have an example of a double web where we have one web on top and one web towards the bottom. This is pattern 146, and once again, you can get double webs on certain knives like karambits or classic, but it's going to vary depending on the knife. On knives with larger blades, you can actually get triple web. I don't think it's possible on the karambit, but on the M9, you can actually get 3 separate webs. This is a very good example, pattern 133, where we have one centered web, one below, and one above. Really good looking pattern in my opinion, and only available on those massive big blades. But I will say this pattern definitely looks really nice. Next up, let's look at gamma Dopplers. Now, for the phase 1s, we have the rare pattern diamond gems. Diamond gems are basically patterns where the entire blade is full blue. Typically, gamma Dopplers are green, but these patterns are going to be full blue. I made a full guide on them. You can check it out. You can also check out Coco's guide as well. He did a great analysis on it. But anyways, in my opinion, best knife finish in the game. I think these look amazing. It's basically case hardened, but with the gamma Doppler finish. It looks insane with superconductors, and this, full bright blue icy blade, I just think looks so good. And I forgot to mention, diamond gems are available on gut knives, karambits, bayonets, and the flip knife. Next up, we have phase 2 gamma Dopplers. Now, there's 2 rare pattern types. We have max green and fake emerald. Right here is a fake emerald. Pattern 350 is going to be the best fake emerald pattern for every knife, and these are available on the flip, the gut, the bayonet, and the karambit. Basically, the entire blade is one green color. There's no color variation, so it kind of gives off like an emerald look, and these patterns look phenomenal. Now, as far as max green goes, this is for knives that cannot get a full green blade. So everything besides the 4 I just mentioned. For example, the M9 is going to have that little dark spot, but it's in the best spot where it's barely visible. And this is pattern 570. This is considered quote unquote a max green pattern where, like I said, there's mostly green. There's not a lot of that dark green splotch that you don't really want. And I do recommend checking out my gamma Doppler guide that I made. I made a full dedicated guide on the gamma Doppler finish that will explain this in high detail. Next up, we have phase 3 gamma Dopplers. Now, this is known as the cyan phase because the 2 rare patterns that you can get has to deal with the cyan color. So cyan bits is a rare pattern on karambits where you can see the entire blade has the cyan color to it. There's a full pattern breakdown, there's a full guide to it, there's a ton of patterns and tiers. I do recommend checking out the guide for that specifically, but these patterns look really nice. If you do like the cyan color, this is definitely your favorite phase. And for the knives that are not the karambit, you can get the max cyan pattern. So right here, the flip 838, it has a ton of, this is the most cyan that you can get on this blade. Once again, looks great. I love the little green spot to the more icy cyan blue color up top. Looks great. And it's available on the flip, the gut knife, and the bayonet. Lastly, let's talk about gamma Doppler phase 4s. The rare pattern from here is max lime. Now, back in CSGO, phase 4s used to be extremely lime. They used to have a big spot on the blade that was full lime, and you can get really nice patterns. Pattern 16 is an example of one of the max lime patterns in CS2. As you can see, it's not nearly as good as it was in CSGO. You can kind of see the lime color when you hit the reflection of the sun, but you cannot replicate how it was in CSGO, which is a huge shame. It kind of got a huge downgrade, but it is still technically a rare pattern. So they're going to be available on the same 4 knives. Once again, karambit, the flip knife, the bayo, and the gut knife. Moving on, let's talk about gems, or the emeralds. So with emeralds, the rare patterns are typically the blades that don't have the dark spots. With gamma Dopplers, you have the wisps, from the pattern sheet, but there are patterns on gems where the entire blade is basically full green, there's no dark spots, and that makes the actual pattern way more desirable than, your typical one. This is pattern 211. As you can see, towards the back of the blade, it's pretty much perfect. No dark spots, but we can see some towards, the tip of the blade. Alright, moving on, let's talk about marble fades. Now, if you're wondering why I'm showing the karambit so much, the karambit is basically the king of rare patterns, where it basically gets every rare pattern in the game. The way the pattern sheet works on the karambit, it's absolutely perfect for all of the rare patterns that we've seen so far. Now, onto the marble fades. Here we have a fire and ice pattern. Most people know what it is, but if you don't, basically fire and ice patterns are gonna have blue and red. Once again, I do feel like it looked better in CSGO, but this is what a first max pattern 412 fire and ice pattern looks like on the karambit. This is available on the karambit, the talon, the flip, and the bayonet. And how I'm going to do a full separate guide on marble fades in general, fire and ice. But how it works, you're going to have fake fire and ice patterns, which aren't technically real fire and ice. We're going to have, I believe, from 10th to first max. So, 10, 9, 8, 7. The lower it is, the better the fire and ice pattern is. Until we get to the first max, which is the absolute best pattern that you can get. And it's going to be this pattern right here, which is 412. Next up, we have the fade finish. Now, there's a quick trick to learn about fade knives. So for the karambit and the talon knife, both curved blades, pattern 412 is 100%. It's the best possible fade where you're going to get the 5% orange, 90% pink, and the 5% purple. So keep that in mind, pattern 412. Now, if we look at every other knife in the game besides the karambit and talon, pattern 763 is the 100% fade. So on this butterfly, you can see 100% fade has the purple tip, the pink towards the bottom, and then orange all the way at the bottom near like the actual handles. This is 100% fade. Now, if we actually take the number one 100% fade pattern from something like a butterfly and apply it to the karambit, what you'll notice on the karambit is that this pattern is actually the lowest fade, 80% fade. You cannot get any lower than this. It's exactly 80%, and it's going to apply to the talon and karambit. So basically, the patterns are flip-flopped. Now, pattern 412, which was the 100% on the karambit and talon, 412 is going to be the lowest fade, 80% on every other knife. So this is what a 80% knife looks like on, say, the butterfly, where we basically get a little bit of the silver and most of the orange and a little bit of the pink. So keep this in mind. 412, 100% on karambit talon, 412, 80% on every other knife. Then we flip-flop, 763, 80% on the karambit talon, and 100% on every other knife. Now, one more thing I want to mention is, quote-unquote, mango fades. Mangoes only apply to butterflies. A mango fade is basically lowest 80% fade possible. It's just a different name to it. There's nothing special about it, but people call these mangoes because they exclusively have like orange and yellow. So if you hear the word mango fade, it's basically an 80% butterfly lowest fade. Moving on, we have the Dopplers. Now, right here, this is phase 1, and some people call them quote-unquote fake black pearls. I'm just gonna call them max purple. So this right here is pattern 630. This is the best pattern on the karambit, and you can get max purple patterns on the same 4 knives that we saw with all of the gamma Dopplers: the karambit, the flip, the bayonet, and the gut knife. Max purple looks pretty nice. It's pretty unique. You don't get like a ton of pink in here. It's just primarily purple and purple on the ring, and like I said, black pearl pattern, I don't know about that, but max purple, I can call it that. For phase 2s, we have the max pink patterns. Now, back then in CSGO, we basically had quote-unquote galaxy pattern phase 2s, where it was like a really nice pattern with a bunch of pink. In CS2, it's not necessarily quote-unquote galaxy patterns, but we do have max pink. Coco actually made a great guide on this, which he did with like computer and software, where he tested like the max pink percentages. And this right here is pattern 350 on the karambit. This is max pink. This is as pink of a blade as you can get. And what you'll notice, by the way, pattern 350 on the phase 2 is going to be the same pattern that is max green on the gamma Doppler. So fake emerald is 350 and max pink is also 350. Really cool how, you know, the gamma Doppler finish works. And if you're wondering, available on the same 4 knives that we talked about. Now, this right here is not an official rare pattern, but I do want to mention it quickly. So phase 3 has some really, really cool patterns where, to me, they look way more like a fake black pearl than, you know, phase 1 does. As you can see, this is pattern 412, and in certain lighting, it looks really dark. It's got that like dark purple tinge on the blue. It looks really cool. Once again, a very niche pattern that most people don't know about. But if you're interested in this like colorway, I would highly recommend checking out phase 3s. They're the most undesired phase out of all of them, but they do have these really special, really cool looking patterns that kind of resemble, you know, black pearls in like super dark lighting. Next up, we have Doppler phase 4s, and the rare pattern is the fake sapphire. This is super important. I highly recommend checking these out. Fake sapphire is basically a phase 4 that looks like a sapphire, where the entire blade is going to have this one, you know, a singular color of blue with like a purple tint to it. In my opinion, fake sapphires look way better than actual sapphires in this game. I don't know, you know, Valve kind of messed that up. I'm really sorry to the sapphire owners. I know they kind of destroyed sapphires, but I will say phase 4s look phenomenal. So this right here is a flip pattern 350. It looks incredible. You could not tell me this does not look like a sapphire. It's now fake sapphires available on karambit, flip, gut knife, and bayonet. You'll notice it's a pattern with pretty much a ton of rare patterns on the Dopplers, gamma Dopplers. Typically, those 4 knives have the pattern sheet layout where you can get these rare patterns to look like this. Really, really good looking pattern, and sometimes you can snipe these for great prices. Alright, next up we have the 2 gems, the ruby and the sapphire. When I talked about emeralds, I talked about, you know, patterns that don't have the wisps, the no dark spots. Those are going to be way more desired on the gems, but also for specifically for the sapphire, patterns that are full blue that don't have like the nasty splotches of like the green, the teal, and the purple are gonna look way better and be way more desirable. Now this pattern 651 right here, it's not like the #1 pattern or anything. It's just an example of a good looking pattern where you can see for the most part it's primarily full blue with not that many green spots. I will probably make a full guide on this later on. But besides that, for black pearls, they work a little bit different, so I'm not going to mention them right now. All right, next up, this isn't an official rare pattern, but I do want to mention it quickly. We have the full silver freehand patterns. Now, the example here is the flip knife pattern 100. As you can see, basically the entire blade is full silver, barely any purple, and it's very unique because you can pair this with something like unhinged gloves or anything silver instead of, the typical purple gloves. Like I said, best example is flip, but you can get this on a few other knives. Alright, next up, another unofficial but really interesting pattern is the clean blade blue steels. Now, typically blue steels will have like blemishes in CS2 where you can see in the light there's like spots that kind of darken the blade. However, as you can see on the play side for this karambit, pattern 217, there is absolutely no blemishes or any spots. So it makes the entire blade super, super clean. You will have to look through patterns yourself. I kind of, spent the time to find some patterns on the karambit. You can find this on pretty much every knife, and, there are certain patterns that look better. Once again, if you like blue steels, definitely keep this in mind, but it's not necessarily quote-unquote a rare pattern. Alright, now let's take a trip down memory lane. Do you guys remember back then in CSGO, how crazy people went over slaughter patterns? Nowadays, people do not really care about these so-called slaughter patterns, but for nostalgia and for, the fact of me mentioning every rare pattern, I'll talk about them because they're a little crazy. So we have the diamond pattern slaughters where you can see there's a diamond in the middle. This is pattern 2 on the bayonet, which is probably the best example. In the middle, there's a diamond. Next up is the heart pattern. And on the M9, towards the middle, a little bit towards the bottom, you can see there's like a little heart. It's a little bit hard to see, and I will agree, whoever came up with this whole system of slaughter patterns, it is a bit of a reach, but, there is supposed to be a little, like, heart, at the bottom of the blade, if you can see it. Angel patterns are basically patterns where you can see directly in the middle of this M9, you can see like an angel silhouette. You got like the little like robes and the hands spread out. I'm gonna try and like point to it or highlight it so you can see, but that's what a angel pattern is considered. And lastly, we have the phoenix pattern. You're really gonna have to like stretch your imagination to see a phoenix in this, but if you look closely in the middle, you can see like the phoenix head and then the wings to the side. Once again, I'll try to point it out and highlight it, but like I said, people nowadays don't really care for these slaughter patterns anymore, but I still wanted to mention it for nostalgia's sake and obviously, for mentioning all rare patterns. One more cool pattern I found while going through slaughters is on the karambit pattern 734. This one right here, as you can see, near the actual, the corner, you can see a little heart placed on, like, the indent, backside of the blade. Really cool pattern. I've never seen it before, but, something to keep in mind, you can get karambit patterns that look like this. Now, another pattern that I personally found myself, which is not a rare pattern by any means, but something to look out for, it's hard to find them, but they're not considered quote-unquote rare patterns, is the full red clean slaughter patterns. I looked through all 1000 patterns on the Talon. As you can see, this one right here, typically you'll have a bunch of shades of red on the slaughter, but this one right here looks really, really clean, where it's like almost just one color of like this pinkish red. And the way the pattern falls, in line with the edges of the blade, it makes it look really, really clean. I love this pattern. This is pattern 23. If you're interested, you can check out my other video on slaughter patterns. All right, besides the fire and ice patterns, marble fades also have the piss and ice, which instead of the red and blue, we have the yellow and blue. Pattern 6 on the karambit is a great example. Just full blue, full yellow. Great for, field agent glove combos or anything like that. It's kind of a funny name and definitely worth mentioning. All right, and finally, I have one more honorable mention. Now, Black Pearl Fades were my favorite knife in CSGO. They do not exist anymore because Valve basically reworked Black Pearls in CS2, so they're all one color. But back in CSGO, we had this really, really cool pattern on Black Pearls because they used to have color, where you could make like the fade pattern on a Black Pearl, where, we had the purple, the pink, and the yellow, and it just looked so cool. I remember Karambit pattern 386 was the #1 best Black Pearl fade pattern, but they sadly don't exist anymore, so I just wanted to, do a little honorable mention for it. They looked incredible, and I'm really, really upset that they actually removed it. So that's pretty much it for this video. We covered basically every single major rare pattern in the game, even some niche ones. And if you're interested, make sure to check out, dedicated guides for whichever knife you're interested in. Also, I would highly recommend checking out my video on how to get rare knife patterns without having to pay absurd prices for the number ones. And the last thing I want to mention, guys, rare patterns are not real, okay? They are made up imaginary rankings and numbers where somebody found a pattern interesting. Please be careful when you buy rare patterns. Make sure to do your research or message me on Discord if you want to buy a rare pattern, but you want to make sure you don't overpay for it. Do your research. Some patterns don't require overpay, some do. You just have to know, what you're looking at. Like I said, contact me if you need some help. And with that being said, guys, if you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like on the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.